Okay, so one of the most important things that I see with people is they'll do a stretch and the stretch just always looks the same over time. And I don't really see them get into deeper zones. And if they don't ever get to that deeper zone, likely that the performance that they do gain will not be long lasting. So what I'd like to show you how to do is how to get deeper into a transformational zone based on the task you want to improve. So let's just say, for instance, you're doing a mobilization to help your body walk more efficiently or run quicker, or something that has to do with walking, where our pelvis and trunk are going in opposite directions. So in the true stretch is a great place to explore. Now let's just say your trainer said the front of your hips are tight, and what you want to do is you want to position your leg here in the true stretch with your hands in the opposite position and drive your leg in all three planes of motion. You start exploring all these different drivers. Well, that's great, but this shouldn't always look the same. What you want to do is you want to understand how to get deeper into the zone. So a simple strategy might be to start in a position, and wherever that is for you is individual to you. Okay, let's say you start with your foot here, okay, wherever that is, and as you're bending forward, you're getting a nice stretch through the hip. And now let's say after a week or 2 weeks and you're consistent with this, doing it regularly, at some point your foot should be able to start in a different starting position, more aggressive, okay? Now eventually at some point you're going to max out your range of motion and you just can't go any further physically, and that's fantastic if you have that problem. That's usually not the case though. So I don't always want to start with my foot so far back here in this stretch. Maybe I want to start with my foot up a little further. The beginning position changes the stresses on the soft tissues. Now, if we want to go into another plane of motion, your trainer will probably tell you, okay, this is what's happening in all three planes of motion, and here's how we position all three planes of motion to increase your threshold. So when I put my foot further out, that goes in more in the sagittal plane. Now, if I were to stretch my hip for walking, the way that I would increase the stress of this, or the demand of this mobilization, is to take my foot in the frontal plane and bring it across midline. Now what it's going to do is put more stress throughout the front of the hip, but also I'm inviting stress into the side of my hip, and now I can do the same exact mobilization, but now I'm positioned more aggressively in the frontal plane. And then in the transverse plane, I know that for walking, my front leg has to go through internal rotation, so I want to position myself internally rotated and then start driving the motion. So I'm still kind of bending forward, but it's at an angle, okay? Now, you might start with your foot here and then it toes in a little bit or comes in a little bit, but I wouldn't say to go out as far as you can, across as far as you can, and in as far as you can. You start to slowly just say, hey, this is day 1, and maybe day 30 is to eventually get into this position. And day 60 we want to be here. And then at the end of, I don't know, 3 months, you really want to be able to maximize this position. So basically what you're doing is you're coming up with a strategy based on your starting point relative to your flexibility and mobility specific to a task. In this case, it was stretching the front of the hip for walking or running, and you want to progress it over time. This is a little bit of a confusing topic. I hope it makes sense to you. Definitely ask your trainer how to enhance the flexibility and mobility of the task you want to improve.